Hello YouTubers and welcome to this week's episode. As you can tell from the title, we're going through what the new training is like, where I'm training, what I've been doing over the last few weeks since I've moved up here to Scotland with Big Yam, with a big massive slaver as well. How are you doing today, Yam? Oh yes. And as you can see, well hopefully you can see, it's the morning. And you can already see your breath up here in Scotland. So summer is fading fast, but that doesn't mean we can't get out there and train. So first things first today, we're going to finish off with breakfast with the lovely little smoothie as per usual. Oh yes. And we're going to get on the water up here in Scotland. So let's get to it.
And this is Auchenstary, depending on where you are. It's up here or down here in central Scotland. A lovely bit of the canal to row down, about 80k that you can just come up, paddle, turn and go back down. Absolutely fantastic. And with the canal being mostly shaded, the water is like glass quite a lot of the time. So it's a great opportunity to get out here, find some glass, just like the river down in Bath, the Avon, but also here, the opportunity to row with some more people on a consistent basis, so I'm not just constantly paddling around myself, whether that's trying to find out if the splits are good relative to other people, or whether it's just having a little chat during a long 700k paddle. It all makes a big difference, but now, just gonna paddle back and have a lovely chilled end of the session. And that's a lovely 300k session complete on the water here at Auchenstary, the new place to be. Getting on the water, flat water. How was your session, Peter?
Excellent.
Mike? Oh yeah, they'll get used to the camera at some point. But good session out the water. Now getting back for some food, because remember, food is fuel, and then we'll talk about a little bit about the program. And I've got a lovely piece to do on the air called you.
Now, after a delicious breakfast of a little bit of an experimental chili cheese edition of the breaded egg toast, we're on the erg for another workout today. But before we start warming up for the workout, which is going to be a 1K at rate 24, just to see how fast I can go, we're talking about the training program now, and my training sort of not necessarily going forward, but what the training is like now versus what it has been over the previous couple of months. So right now I'm training with the guys on the GB Start program here in Scotland, and for those of you that don't know, the Start program is a program in rowing, and I think other sports as well, made to attract or find athletes that may not necessarily have known they're any good at that sport. So I know people have transferred from different sports like swimming into rowing, and I know people have transferred from sports like rowing into things like cycling, because there's quite a lot of crossover in different sports that you can work in to the other sports. And so I'm working with those guys here as a little training group to add a little bit of that motivation into my training, because over the past, since January really, since I moved to Bath, I've really only been able to train consistently by myself. It would be, I could train with Charlie or maybe one other person consistently every so often, or not necessarily consistently, but it would generally be by myself through the whole time. Especially into lockdown, the training became very lonely and meant that there was a lot of time spent on bay right here. Again, just because of everything going on throughout the world, it meant that you had to sort of deal with the situation, how you could deal with it. But now, slightly easing things, we're able to train not necessarily in the same boats, but are in very close together, but as a group we can train and do similar things, share scores, talk to each other about workouts, etc., which makes a little bit of a difference. Even when you're on the water and you can see someone in the distance, you're thinking, okay, I'm not here by myself, I'm out here in the water doing the same thing as someone else, if that makes sense. The training itself, the volume and the intensities aren't really that much different to what I've been doing over the past few months, but it's just the modalities and the approach to training that has changed a little bit. So as you've seen in the past few videos, I've been out in the Highlands of Scotland with the guys and girls climbing and some hills, some Munros here in Scotland. That's part of the training. Other parts, so I'm able to do some more cross training like cycling as part of the training itself, and obviously getting out in the single and rowing on the erg gives me multiple different modalities to go train with, rather than, especially through lockdown, I was pretty much exclusively on the erg doing a couple of 100k a week, which, even though erg is bay and you can do as much as you want to make the erg enjoyable and like making sure you're in the right intensity zones, getting YouTube up, watching movies, listening to your favorite music, eventually it can become tiresome and wearing, and the motivation, the variation needed becomes much greater. So things like me getting out on a third session of the day out on the bike for a UT3, UT2 recovery session is just hugely different than trying to do that on the rowing machine when I've already been on the rowing machine in the previous workout. And then the same thing again, getting out in the single is vastly different than either of the rowing machine or the bike, and just gives me that opportunity to vary things up. But of course, rowing is a rowing sport, so getting out in the single, getting out in the water is the most important thing. The rowing machine, the bike, whatever it is secondary to getting on the water. Weights wise, unfortunately, gyms here in Scotland aren't too open, so not being able really to get out and do a lot of weights. So I've lost quite a bit of weight, roughly 15 kilos, about 35 pounds or so, since the peak of the weight, probably around April time, around 2k time. But it seems like the power itself hasn't reduced too much. Definitely reduced, but I don't think it's down to the weight loss. I think it's more just the getting used to doing the power stuff again, if that makes sense. But that's kind of how the training is looking now. Like I said, volume hasn't really changed, intensity hasn't really changed, it's just how it's been done. So for example, instead of doing a long ergo here on bay, you can do an even longer session, maybe 4, 5, 6 hours going up a Munro in Scotland, which takes a lot out of you even though you're at that low intensity for a long time, if that makes sense. As well as getting out on the bike, you can adjust those intensities and be out on the bike for 2 hours much easier than you could sit on 2 hours on bay for. So hopefully that all makes sense. Now it's time for a little bit of a 1K, rate 24. Hopefully I can hit that rate after a lovely little warm up. So I'll see you after the warm up, and we'll see how this 1K goes. A little bit of a warm up. 250, supposed to be at rate 44. Missed that a little bit. But now we get on to the 1K, rate 24. And there we go, the 1K, 130, as you can see, had quite a bit of a blow. Now you may be thinking, doing a 250 as a warm-up would be a bad idea, and technically it is, but it wasn't a warm-up. Part of this workout as a whole, 250, big break, 1K at rate 24. Underrated slightly, but oh, the legs weren't there today for that. Ooh. But experience, ticking a box, seeing what this is like so I can improve on next time. And just trying to enjoy the process, not necessarily only looking for the outcome. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do over this past couple months, settling in here, doing the training, even with cycling it's about a month ago now, taking time out of the cycling to make sure I'm enjoying it as a whole, enjoying the process rather than just sort of burying myself for the sake of it, if that makes sense. So not backing off just because I can, but more trying to be a bit more sensible and thinking what is going to do better for me here, going full blaze, full yam, or a little bit of recovery, a little bit of rest, a little bit of fun. Then in the long run I'll benefit rather than in the immediate short term. But obviously this workout, that doesn't really apply. This one was from the get-go, go as hard as you can, and lost a lot of time. Maybe I just went out a bit ambitious and I thought I was ahead of where I actually am. It's a learning process, but that will be it for today's episode, Yam Squad. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I've been talking about this surprise, this next part of the journey, this next project for a few weeks now, and it's happening next week. So next video, or at least it should be next video, should be next video, will be the reveal of the next project, and I'm really looking forward to letting you guys see it and hearing what you guys think of it, because I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun enabling that enjoyment of the process, not just for training but for life in general. Not sure if that gives anything away or not, but As always, it's for future Yam Squad to look forward to, so remember to stay subscribed or be subscribed at all if you haven't already, so that you know when the video does come out. You can be there to watch it. And if you did like this video, I really enjoyed making this one actually, hit that like button, because subscribing and hitting that like button does push the channel through the algorithm to show to more people, to let more people know what the Yam Squad's all about, as well as the rowing training, how fun sitting on bay is, even if it's blowing your doors off, and how fun it is to be on the water. And I'll see you in next week's episode.